Welcome to the House Rules, the gaming compliance podcast from the Association of Certified Gaming Compliance Specialists. In this podcast, we will hear from casino and iGaming compliance specialists, discussing the latest trends and hot topics impacting the industry. We will also be focusing on careers in compliance, hearing from seasoned professionals about their own career paths and sharing their expertise and insights. In this episode, join Alex Cote for an introduction to cryptocurrency, compliance approaches to cryptocurrency, and the role of crypto in the casino gaming industry.
Anyways, guys, thanks for attending. So today we're going to talk about crypto and casinos, and specifically crypto casinos. So I'm going to try to go over some risks that I see in my personal day-to-day work at a major cryptocurrency exchange globally, and then as well some challenges that I see in the casino space and how these have really come to intersect over the past few years, especially over the past crypto bull run. Crypto casinos are only becoming more and more popular, especially given the international footprint that they have and the increasing ease of cryptocurrency transactions. I definitely want this to be less formal and more interactive. So if really anyone has any questions, just either feel free to toss them in the chat or just hop right in on the mic. That's more than okay. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So a little bit about me. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, and I worked after graduating for 2 years in banking investigations with the Bank of Montreal here in Canada. So with the Bank of Montreal, I did mostly enhanced due diligence investigations with a little bit of crypto flair. So at the time, we did have several cryptocurrency involved customers that I was responsible for reviewing. And I realized that it was a space that I was really, really interested in, and it was a challenging one at that. So in early 2020, I made the hop to a large cryptocurrency exchange where I'm now an investigations manager, leading a team of investigators doing cybercrimes investigations, specifically on stolen funds, money laundering, bridge hacks, and sanctions evasion, you name it. Now, let's hop right into things, and we're going to do some basic risk assessing of not only the casino space, but also the crypto space. So specifically, the challenges that I mostly see in the crypto space, specifically with compliance right now, is primarily the global nature of cryptocurrency transactions. This really poses trouble not only for compliance entities, but also for law enforcement. And similar to how, in a traditional space, you would risk rate jurisdictions with wire transfers, you would also risk rate different exchanges based on their geographic location. A great example of this is the Russian exchange Garantex, which was recently sanctioned earlier this year by OFAC due to severe money laundering deficiencies. This is an exchange that's based in Russia, a now high-risk jurisdiction, at least traditionally speaking. And when we look on-chain, so on the cryptocurrency blockchain at the exchange Garantex, we see pretty severe exposure to various ransomware, cybercrime-related addresses. And overall, they're known to have a lack of mature KYC and AML controls. And we know this just by signing up for accounts and realizing that you can get an account with barely offering any information. And finally, Garantex also has links to Federation Tower in Moscow, which is popularly known as the home of some major cybercrimes groups. So simply put, the global nature of cryptocurrency and how transactions can transcend international lines in minutes poses significant challenges for law enforcement as well as compliance agents. Secondly, the complexity of our obligations, specifically when it comes to SAR or STR reporting. From at least a law enforcement perspective, some overtly stringent global laws can really result in difficulty in getting intelligence. We're lucky in the sense that things like MLATs, mutual legal assistance treaties, exist in order for international bodies to cooperate. However, I've found that these tend to be quite time-consuming, although robust. And so generally speaking, the international nature of cryptocurrency, the different regulatory bodies and obligations that exist, make this space very difficult to maneuver through, simply put. And lastly, just cryptocurrency investigations overall. They are complex, time-consuming, and technically challenging. The thing that really is unique about cryptocurrency transactions is, of course, the blockchain and the investigative work that we can do on the blockchain. Simply put, by being able to look into addresses or look at currencies that are deposited at a platform and be able to trace them back to their originating source, not only opens up a whole lot of work for compliance agents, but it makes risk rating transactions and customers much simpler. However, in the more traditional space with a wire transfer, you have access to very limited information, and you can form a risk rating based off that limited information. But oftentimes you're working with, very limited data. However, on the blockchain side of things, you're working with almost overwhelming amounts of data. And so making a robust risk framework based off that data is challenging, difficult, but it's also very fun, and I quite enjoy it. So some challenges in gambling that I'm aware of, and I'm hoping that Ian or some other OLG friends will be able to kind of pitch in to help out a little bit here. But some ones that I know just from my work in the general space, primarily the Cullen Commission in British Columbia really highlighted some anti-money laundering deficiencies existing in the casino space, specifically in British Columbia, and how casinos can be abused by illicit groups for money laundering. Specifically, the money laundering via cash in casinos in British Columbia became known as the Vancouver model amongst compliance professionals, and that's never a name that you want to earn, simply put. Specifically, the model was essentially we have Silver International, a currency exchanger that's suspected of laundering the proceeds of crime from foreign jurisdictions, who would then transfer funds via customers to the River Rock Casino in Vancouver, subsequently layering the proceeds of crime, and then these funds would then be transferred back out to foreign bank accounts, effectively cleaned. Now, FinTrack did introduce a project, specifically Project Athena, in direct response to these allegations. However, the investigation is still ongoing. Also, challenges in other gambling investigations can include the range of financial services that casinos offer. Specifically, cryptocurrency exchanges, to kind of compare, offer some traditional banking products and cryptocurrency products. However, they're very unitary in a sense. We offer deposits, withdrawals, and trading, but you can't really go and deposit cash or a check at a cryptocurrency exchange. However, casinos offer all of these services, and they also offer foreign exchange and perhaps soon cryptocurrency. The amount of financial services that these land-based casinos offer just results in an increased risk landscape. There are many, many avenues for layering. And lastly, just simply put, the difficulty of investigations due to the above range of financial services and the threat landscape in traditional casinos. Investigations can prove to be difficult due to not only the cash basis of the business, but also third-party gamblers, either gambling on behalf of someone else or utilizing other people's funds, and the general difficulty behind ascertaining source of funds. Now, really, where these topics truly intersect in my mind, in crypto casinos, at least. So when I say crypto casinos, what I mean is a casino that exclusively offers gambling, but in cryptocurrency. I'm not discussing any kind of traditional casinos that might offer cryptocurrency services, as an additional service. However, crypto casinos, ones that offer exclusive gambling in cryptos, have become more and more popular globally, mostly due to the unregulated nature and the ease of setting these up internationally. Firstly, crypto gambling, as a general note, tends to be against exchange AML policies, and for good reason. A lot of exchanges, simply put, don't have the regulatory compliance set up to be able to bank these casinos. And so as a result, they often have to evade additional measures in order to get access to liquidity. Simply put, setting up your own wallet and blockchain infrastructure in a secure manner where you're comfortable with the security and users are confident in the user experience is not only expensive, but it's very complex. For the majority of gambling platforms, this, simply put, isn't going to be realistic. And so as a result, they're almost forced to use exchange partners. However, most regulated exchanges are not going to allow crypto gambling platforms to have an account. And as a result, there are plenty of platforms that attempt to evade being identified as a gambling platform. So they'll onboard as a financial services company. They'll onboard as an advertising company. They'll onboard as a digital marketing company. And they'll set up the whole infrastructure and they will process gambling transactions, but they'll try to evade detection from the parent exchange. Secondly, most gambling platforms, at least crypto gambling platforms, tend to have severe KYC deficiencies. And this is known, simply put, by signing up for an account. Like I gave the example with Garantex, the vast majority of the time, these platforms do not ask for detailed KYC information. And in fact, the limits without giving KYC tend to actually be quite high. And secondly, there's a general lack of controls surrounding the use of virtual private networks. Just like I said before regarding the expense of complicated wallet and blockchain infrastructure, many gambling platforms, simply put, don't have the resources to utilize any kind of rigorous IP blocking technologies or scanning devices for illicit signatures. And as a result, sanctioned people in sanctioned countries often utilize gambling platforms in order to obfuscate their funds and to get currencies outside of sanctioned jurisdictions and onto the blockchain where they can then purchase goods. And lastly, just regulations. Due to the online nature of crypto casinos, they're not restricted in the same way that land-based casinos are to a certain customer base. They can operate internationally with customers all over the world. And simply put, enforcement action is limited depending on where the customers are based. I see Ash posted in the chat. It seems money laundering through casinos is very rampant in BC, even though Ontario is the biggest hotspot for gambling in Canada. What makes BC as a province more susceptible to gambling-related money laundering risks? That's a great question. I think, generally speaking, at least from what I've been keeping up with the Cullen Commission and their findings, I would say geographically it's just closer to Southeast Asia, where a lot of illicit funds tend to be coming from, and that has been supported by the findings of the Cullen Commission. However, it's not a topic that I'm super close with, so I'm definitely open to hearing alternative perspectives on why BC specifically has been victimized. But yeah, as I was saying, from the regulatory perspective, internationally speaking, enforcement against these online casinos is difficult, time-consuming, and oftentimes for law enforcement, they've got larger priorities than technically illegal casinos. Now, where crypto casinos really are unique is in the sense that they operate on the blockchain. And so as a result, we are able to perform blockchain investigations. And for me, this is one of the greatest parts of working in crypto investigations, is simply put, being able to use amazing analytics tools like Chainalysis, TRM Labs, Elliptic. These are really mature platforms. They're advanced, they're smooth, the user experience is very great. And suddenly we're able to see the full nature of our clients' transactions when they deposit on a platform. And as a money service business, you're actually obligated to utilize and monitor all your transactions. And this also includes blockchain transactions. The most interesting thing that I find about blockchain analytics and the work that we do is that not only can you see the original source of funds with most proof of work coins, but you can also peer into addresses held at other exchanges and see what their source of funds were. So for example, we might see a transfer to an address at Coinbase, and we might risk rate this transaction as low risk. Coinbase is a public company. They're a regulated exchange. We're not necessarily concerned about a client who's transferring funds to Coinbase. However, we can actually look into the Coinbase address that we've identified and see where else they've received funds outside of the one transfer. And we might see higher risk funds also entering that address, heightening the risk of that address, despite only having that first surface level intelligence of an exchange, of a transfer to Coinbase. Simply put, the blockchain not only gives us the ability to risk rate various different customers, but when it really comes down to analyzing gambling platforms, we can look into the gambling platforms' wallets and realize where their funds might be coming from. And as a result, give them a risk rating and a risk landscape as to what people are using these crypto gambling platforms for and how they're using them. And simply put, gambling platforms, specifically crypto gambling platforms, tend to be higher risk than I think people tend to think about. Specifically, as I said before, many of the crypto gambling platforms don't have the necessary infrastructure or compliance staff or regulatory regime in order to set up a mature monitoring framework that has skilled compliance investigators. And as a result, we actually do see significant involvement from not only sanctioned countries, but also high-risk countries and then cybercrime-related entities as well. And when we actually analyze the blockchain and analyze the transactions from these entities that are entering these gambling platforms, we see something really unique. And so when we actually look at the transactions, for example, we'll see 1.5 Bitcoin enter a gambling entity from an Iranian exchange, and then immediately 10 minutes later, we see 1.49 Bitcoin exit the gambling platform. And this is a famous, AML typology known as pass-through, where essentially all the gambling entity is acting as is simply put just a hop along the chain, where the illicit actor is attempting to clean up the trail of their funds. And as a result, this simply looks like the proceeds of gambling rather than the proceeds from an Iranian exchange, for example. And our on-chain data is not only super interesting, and it gives us a good look at gambling risk, but it also validates our risk assessment that we went over before. We identified potential risks in gambling platforms based on the fact that they have to evade to even get liquidity partners, but also that they're simply put abused quite often by illicit actors involved in cybercrime and sanctions evasion. So let's go over a quick case study. Specifically, this case study goes over Chinese capital flight and how online gambling platforms have come to facilitate this. And this is a typology that we've seen in my own personal team quite a bit, and it's something that we actively investigate. For those that might not know, most Chinese banks have wire restrictions regarding kind of the funds that are going out of the country. I believe this limit is $10,000, and so it equivalent in yuan. And so essentially getting funds outside of the country, either for legitimate or illegitimate purposes, tends to actually be quite difficult. And so for this purpose, cryptocurrency and its rapid international nature actually appeals a lot to these users. And so the typology that we noticed in this case study tends to be that the online gambling platforms essentially act as a way for these users to avoid the international and traditional banking system, and specifically avoid using international wires, which are not only easily traced, but also require full KYC information as the wire travels throughout the world. Specifically, the way that this case works is that Chinese nationals will pay runners or mules in yuan, and they will pay these mules either in cash or other kind of peer-to-peer payment platforms in China. And then these runners will then utilize underground banking systems, including hawalas, hundis, and other kind of underground banking systems in order to transfer the funds into bank accounts, which will then be wired into international cryptocurrency exchanges based in the local country. And at this point, these funds are subsequently traded to Tether and then withdrawn to a gambling platform as a pass-through. And just like I was discussing before about the example with people in Iran utilizing gambling platforms as a pass-through, they will then immediately withdraw the funds, essentially cleaning them. And then when the funds are withdrawn to a regulated exchange that has significant banking partners globally, all the funds look like is that they've come from a gambling platform. And it's very easy to explain the source of funds to a compliance agent as originating from the proceeds or winnings of a gamble. Subsequently, these funds will then be withdrawn to foreign bank accounts, where the Chinese nationals will then be free to utilize their funds outside of China as they wish. So this is a really interesting case study and highlights several issues with online gambling platforms as it currently stands, specifically the lack of regulation, the presence of third-party funds and third-party gambling. However, there are currently regulatory responses to these kinds of issues, at least in North America and Europe, especially considering the travel rule. So the travel rule is something that is very present in traditional banking. And essentially all it's saying is that KYC information travels with the funds. So in the sense of an international wire, whenever an international wire is deposited at a correspondent bank or at the final destination, it carries with it KYC information about the sender: name, date of birth, address, etc. As it currently stands, this is not the case with cryptocurrency. So oftentimes I can send crypto to a third party at another exchange, for example, and for all the other exchange knows, those funds are theirs and not mine. However, FinCEN and other large regulatory bodies in North America and Europe, as well as FATF, are proposing putting the travel rule onto the cryptocurrency chains, essentially requiring that exchanges collect travel information from users. So whenever a user would withdraw funds from their cryptocurrency platform, they'd be forced to provide KYC information about the sender. And then when the funds land at the receiving exchange, they would subsequently verify that information and assure that it is correct and transmitted correctly. And in that sense, this would mitigate any kind of third-party risk and also mitigate the issues that we saw with this case study, as third-party transfers would not be allowed to happen and underground banking would be limited in its usefulness. So overall, what did we learn from this brief case study? Overall, we learned that crypto gambling is often treated as lower risk than it really is. I think all of us really see crypto gambling as, a fun time. We can play poker, win some more Bitcoin. However, oftentimes these platforms tend to be under-regulated, and oftentimes when depositing at legitimate exchanges in order to cash out, it's very easy for compliance agents to view this as a legitimate source of funding and not necessarily understand the risks that are surrounding these platforms. Furthermore, when we talk about risks just in general with interacting with crypto gambling platforms, we also need to touch on the jurisdictional laws and rules for the country that the user resides in. Simply put, online gambling is legal in many jurisdictions globally. And due to the lack of regulation with crypto gambling platforms, many platforms, simply put, choose not to operate in the US due to stringent regulatory requirements and law enforcement action. However, oftentimes online gambling is actually illegal in many countries in the world. It's just not necessarily enforceable or enforced very strictly. And so this also creates risk for platforms that are facilitating transfers to and from crypto gambling platforms, despite it being illegal in that user's jurisdiction. Overall, something really important to highlight is that crypto crime and utilizing crypto gambling platforms isn't necessarily a new trick, or these aren't new techniques that are being utilized. In fact, all these techniques have been previously utilized, as highlighted by the Cullen Commission in British Columbia, utilizing international transactions, third parties, foreign bank accounts, and underground banking. These are all utilized and highlighted frequently at ACAMS conferences, ACAM certifications. These are highlighted as large risks in the gambling industry. And if anything, crypto gambling is just a new medium for money laundering in these cases and isn't anything new, really. And I think that's particularly interesting. Generally speaking, we'll go over quickly just the cryptocurrency financial crime geography and where we tend to really see the greatest risks in my work. So the United States is always a surprising one. However, foreign jurisdictions, simply put, more often than not, are just trying to get money into the US financial system for essentially their usage, whether that's further layering through real estate, international bank accounts, or the general traditional financial system. And the biggest reason for this is that United States-based exchanges tend to have the best banking partner relationships. There are plenty of cryptocurrency exchanges and crypto gambling platforms worldwide that offer cryptocurrency services, but getting those funds into dollars, yuan, rubles, euros tends to be quite difficult if you don't utilize a regulated exchange. So simply put, clients are attempting to get cryptocurrencies into United States regulated exchanges so they can utilize the strong banking partner relationships and abuse them. We also see significant financial crime activity in Colombia, and this is logically due to the connections to serious organized crime groups in South America, specifically linked to the cocaine trade. We often see significant money laundering and money muling in this area, with people utilizing bank accounts and forgeries of their KYC information, specifically their residency. So they'll offer residency based in the US when in reality they're based in Colombia. And we know this based off IP logins and their digital device signatures. We also see significant financial crime activity in Russia. And this is for obvious reasons based off recent sanctions activity, as well as general ransomware and cybercrime activity that we know is present in the region. And a big highlight of Russia is going to be Federation Tower in Moscow. This was the registered address for various large cryptocurrency exchanges in Russia, including Garantex, which was recently sanctioned by OFAC. And we see significant financial crime activity associated with entities that have Federation Tower as their registered address. Next, we have China. And specifically to what I said recently regarding the gambling typology, we see lots of capital flight outside of China utilizing the blockchain as a method to escape the capital flight rules. China also poses significant problems with unknown source of funds and general money laundering out of the region. It's very difficult to ascertain source of funds entering an exchange or a crypto gambling platform when those funds originate from China. Lastly, we have North Korea. Specifically, the Lazarus Group, the government-sponsored hacking group, has been very active in the cryptocurrency space. Specifically, they've been behind many large-scale hacks, notably the recent Harmony Bridge and Ronin Bridge hacks, totaling well over $700 million USD. Both law enforcement and exchanges compliance agents are laser focused on these hacked funds. And due to blockchain technology, we're able to understand the Lazarus Group's signature and identify other financial crime actions that were performed by them. Simply put, these hacked funds ultimately go to fund the country's sanctions evasion actions. Now, based on that geography, we can kind of broaden the lens to general typologies that we see in this space. And this is past just crypto gambling, but also just general financial crime trends that we see in the space. So firstly, money muling is one that is extremely popular. And in my own opinion, this is due to the current lack of travel rule compliance within the space, where it's very easy for third-party funds to be deposited to another account. Excuse me. In the traditional banking system, If I were to send a transfer to one of my friends, it'd be very easy to realize that these funds are not theirs. At the end of the day, when you look at the transfer as a banking compliance agent, you see my name and address associated with this transfer. The way cryptocurrency currently works is it doesn't work in the same way. All we see is funds originating from a private wallet address or from another exchange. We don't actually know where these funds originate from in the sense of where in the world did they originate from, or who was the user that originally had these funds. We can only make guesswork at this time due to the lack of travel rule compliance in the general global compliance sphere. As a result, people will sign up for various exchange accounts utilizing forged or fake KYC documentation, and then withdraw funds in fiat or cryptocurrency for further layering. We also see significant issues with unlicensed MSBs globally. And generally speaking, this is due to a lack of regulation around cryptocurrency globally. Cryptocurrency is quite heavily regulated now in North America and most parts of Europe. But globally speaking, cryptocurrency is still not really recognized as a financial instrument. And as a result, registering as an MSB, monitoring transactions, and filing SARs isn't necessarily a requirement globally quite yet. And as a result, it's quite easy for individuals or shell companies acting as these MSBs to inadvertently launder the proceeds of crime, as they don't have either a mature KYC policy or mature monitoring rules. Excuse me. Thirdly, we do see significant work with sanctions evasion, specifically with North Korea and Venezuela. Venezuela has been quite active in the crypto sphere. They have government-sanctioned wallets that they utilize and government-sanctioned exchanges. And these are all to escape the traditional financial system, which has been unfortunately victim to significant inflation. Specifically in South America, many users actually utilize cryptocurrency and other peer-to-peer platforms like local Bitcoins, Remitano, etc., due to the fact that the traditional banking system isn't as mature as it is in North America. And this, simply put, generates significant challenges for compliance agents, as transfers from Venezuela often have a sanctions nexus that we have to take very careful of. Specifically with North Korea, on the other hand, we see cyber criminals hacking various online platforms, cryptocurrency bridges to be specific, and then subsequently laundering those funds either via money muling or unlicensed MSBs or mixers, and then utilizing these clean funds to then fund the nuclear program or various other purposes in North Korea. And lastly, we see plenty of cybercrime and fraud in the cryptocurrency space. The majority of our filing volume, that is filing SARs, actually tends to be in the investment fraud space. So this is when you receive a phone call or your friend is telling you, hey man, this coin is going to moon, you got to invest right now. And it turns out that it was never a real investment in the first place. And unfortunately, you lose your funds due to the inherently irreversible nature of cryptocurrency transactions. And this is by far the largest investigative area that we currently see is in the fraud space. Really appreciate your time here today, guys. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or talk more about cryptocurrency or gambling. Ian, I also want to thank you for having me on today. And yeah, any kind of last thoughts that you can give on casinos and the compliance challenges that exist in there, I'd be very eager to hear about. I think Ash posted a question, curious about your thoughts on Tornado Cash being added to the SDN list. A lot of transactions a crypto exchange sees comes from mixers such as Tornado Cash. How do you think crypto firms can manage this risk? Yeah, that's been a large topic today, to say the least. So a little bit of a dumpster fire currently. But it's a very interesting choice. It's not the first time that OFAC has sanctioned a mixer. Blender is also a cryptocurrency mixer that was sanctioned a few months ago due to being involved with North Korean money laundering. And it's likely that OFAC has sanctioned Tornado Cash for the same concerns, as it's been utilized by the Lazarus Group to launder various hacks, including the Ronin Bridge hack and the Harmony Bridge. And so simply put, just their involvement with North Korean cybercrime has put them on the map as a sanctioned entity now. How do I think crypto firms can manage this risk? I think it's mostly on two fronts. The first one is going to be to have mature monitoring analytics. So utilizing leading vendors like Chainalysis or TRM Labs to identify sanctioned transactions entering your exchange or leaving your exchange is absolutely key. And secondly, it's going to be training. You need to have mature investigators who understand how to use these tools and understand the risks that come alongside, mixers, etc. Without adequate training or skilled investigators, it's overly difficult. Would mixers be able to easily change their name / get new addresses? Theoretically, yes. And that's often why plenty of people in the cryptocurrency compliance space don't necessarily view sanctioning addresses as a mature approach to limiting financial crime. Is due to the fact that cryptocurrency funds are easily transferred to new addresses, or you can open up a company under a new name. The really interesting thing about Tornado Cash and the sanctions that went on there that I think makes this action really unique is with the Blender sanctioning another cryptocurrency mixer. Blender was a custodial mixer, so it had a centralized entity that could be shut down. However, Tornado Cash, on the other hand, is inherently decentralized. And what I mean by that is there's no third party kind of holding your funds and jumbling them and then handing them back to you. This is all done on a decentralized ledger. So essentially, if you were to send funds to Tornado Cash, you would automatically receive them back with no third party ever handling the funds, which makes this aspect quite unique. As I believe Tornado Cash tweeted later today, post sanctioning, claiming that you can't sanction a smart contract, which is a really kind of unique perspective that I haven't had a chance to really digest yet. This is very recent news, but for as a general topic is a very interesting one. Any other topics or questions that I can touch on, guys? All right. If anyone has any questions that come up after the fact, or you want to hear more about crypto compliance, or you want to just chat with me, that's more than fine. You can go ahead and add me on LinkedIn, just Alex Cote. I'm pretty responsive to messages overall and always eager to talk to new people. If you had to find a solution instead of OFAC sanctioning addresses, what would it be? Sorry for too many questions. Don't apologize. It's all very interesting stuff and why I'm here. That's a great question and honestly a challenging one. Obviously, Tornado Cash being abused by North Korean cyber criminals is a big issue and one that has been difficult to solve. Yeah, maybe one to come back to next time. I'll have to think about that one. I think it's a difficult question, simply put, and I think regulators and government and law enforcement are doing their best to be able to mitigate the risk that comes with these illicit actors. However, I think that there must be a better way. Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great rest of your day, okay?